Rube, it's been a weird couple weeks. The schedule's been all wacky and it's a little strange, but we're kind of back at it now.
Yeah, bye week, Thursday game, Monday game. It's hard to get into a routine because every day is kind of, you're like looking at the calendar, like, is today Wednesday? Is it Thursday? What's the schedule? But but it's, it means people want to watch your team if they keep playing on national TV.
That's true. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. He's Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Bunch of stuff to get into today. A Monday Night Football game against the Washington Commanders coming up. So we'll break down that from every angle possible. Also, Frank Reich now suddenly available. Would it make sense? Would it not? We'll talk about that in a little bit. But we first today wanted to highlight one position group on this team that has been playing just so well this season. That's the secondary.
Yeah, I don't know if we've talked enough about them. We've talked certainly about individual guys in that unit, but it wasn't all that long ago. How come they give up 80% completion percentage every week? They're now number one in the NFL in completion percentage. And it's Gannon growing as a coach. It's personnel, and certainly a completely different secondary other than Slay. And just guys playing really, really at a high level and playing well together and making plays at big moments in the game. It's really hard to pass on this team because their corners are so good. They're getting really good pressure almost every week. And they're playing bad quarterbacks. All
That'll
those things that helps. And look, it helps if you're not playing, Brady, Mahomes, and Derek Carr in order. And look, Taylor Heinicke is going to be the fifth straight quarterback they'll face with 20 or fewer career starts. So sometimes those guys are pretty good, but usually they're not really quite ready for what they're going to see. And but I think the togetherness in this group is what's most impressive. And when you consider Epps wasn't a starter last year, might started 3 games. Bradbury wasn't here till late in free agency. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson wasn't here until after training camp. To see all these parts come together and play as a unit so well has been really, really impressive to watch.
Yeah, that's a good point because we knew they were good players, right? Like Slay's really good and Bradbury's really good, and we thought Gardner-Johnson was at least talented. We didn't know how he would be at a safety position, but to see them all kind of come together and play at this high level, it's been impressive. And they've also opened up Gannon's ability as a defensive play caller too. I mean, they're playing a lot more man this year, and it's because they have the players to do it. Yeah. So I give him credit for doing what his players do best a lot. And they've been really good at mixing up coverages, and altogether it's a really talented group. And when you have a good secondary and you have good pass rushers, you have a good defense.
Yeah, they go hand in hand so much. And I mean, the conversation, and I think that was a big part of the issue with the secondary last year, was quarterbacks really could just stand back in the pocket and they weren't pressuring. So now you get Hassan Reddick in the mix, and it's really changed. It's changed everything. Hargrave, the pressure we've seen from him recently.
Healthy Big G
has been huge. He's playing really well. Mm-hmm. Playing really well. Not playing a ton of snaps. I think they're using him really intelligently for a guy who's 34. But it, especially when this offense builds a lead and teams have to throw, it just plays right into this defense's hands. And
how many times last year too did we say this defensive strategy works, but you got to get turnovers? They didn't get them last year. This year, I mean, they lead the league in takeaways, and they have 12 interceptions already. They're making the plays they need to make. It's been really fun to watch.
Same number of interceptions they had all last year, I believe.
It is, yeah.
It's been so long since this team had. I mean, 2017 they had a really good secondary, but
even that year, I mean, Darby missed so much time during the season.
He was hurt. Yeah.
Their safeties were steady that year, obviously, with Malcolm and Rodney.
Yeah, and every time they threw a Jalen, you kind of held your breath. Mm-hmm. Mills, that is. There's a lot of Jalen's that we seem to talk about here. One we don't have to talk about anymore, thank God. But, I mean, Jalen Mills played well that year, but, you kind of – I mean, how many people at the link were holding their breath on the last play of the Falcons game? I mean, it's like, oh, no, Julio Jones. But a couple quick stats on the secondary. Eagles are they have not allowed a team a pass rating over 80 all year. Well, last year, the passer rating against them was 98 for the season.
Yeah.
This year hasn't been over 80. And they've literally gone from 32nd to first in opposing quarterback completion percentage. I think they're at 56% now. Have not allowed more than 239 passing yards in a game. It's the first time since 1991 they've held their first 8 opponents below 250 net passing yards. And there's a bunch more, but you get the idea. They're pressuring, they're covering, they're making big plays. Those are all the things you want, and they're doing it consistently well. And it's not just one guy. I think that's, you have 3 guys with 3 or more interceptions, which hasn't happened this early in the season in 30 years.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of coming together, and I feel like Gannon and Denard Wilson's a guy we don't really talk about. But I think he's a pretty good coach.
He is. He's the guy on this staff that, if you're looking ahead, and we did this when Gannon was getting attention last year, that he's the most logical internal candidate to be a defensive coordinator they have.
Yeah. Yeah, I think from what I know, from what I've seen, I think he'd be a good one. But he's done a really good job, and I think he gets a lot of credit for just how quickly the whole thing is meshed. I think a lot of that is him. A lot of this is the players who, got really took it seriously. And I did a story on that a few weeks ago, and they all just said, starting in day 1 of OTAs, we were like, let's get to know each other on and off the field. And they just started hanging out at Slay's house and getting to know each other. And, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson came in late to all that, but they embraced him. Slay's like, his first day here, I took him to my house. We watched film. That's special.
Yeah, that's why Slay is a captain. Yeah. For all the goofiness, there's something under it.
Yeah.
And it matters. It really does, especially in the circumstances they had this year with all those pieces. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, CJ Gardner-Johnson, CD Deuce, whatever you want to call him, some of his interceptions this year are special plays, and they're not special in like he makes the read, and they're just special catches.
Yeah.
And that's almost as hard as creating the interception yourself.
Yeah, and for a long time here, I mean, those are plays that didn't get made, and a guy was in the right position. He made the read. He got his hands on the ball and just went through his hands. How many times did we see that the last few years? Yeah. So they're making the plays they didn't make the last few years, and it's a big reason they're 8-0.
I've been fascinated, as you've seen this week, by the work that goes into the defensive backs working on their hands, and it is kind of interesting. Nick Sirianni makes all the DBs go through catch drills and the entire catch circuit, like the receivers go through. And Nick got excited talking about it on Thursday, like what that really means. And all it really means is that they try to put these guys in positions to make tough catches, and which makes a lot of sense, especially like receivers. You want to be able to catch the ones that come to you, but if you're a defensive back, for the most part, interceptions aren't thrown at your numbers, right? Like you're going to have to make some low catches, some high catches. Diving ones are tough to replicate, but there are all these difficult catch points that you have to work on, and they do that throughout the week, and throughout the weeks it's paid off.
Yeah, we've seen all 3 of those guys make kind of circus interceptions. Slay,
and I'll add Vontae to that. His one interception was that leaping grab.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I mean, there's it's not. I mean, I'm trying to think out of his 5 interceptions, how many of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's have been routine plays, and maybe one of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's all over the place, and they're big plays, at big moments, and
a pass breakup's great.
Yeah,
it's great, but
unless it's on 4th down, they still have the ball.
Yeah, an interception can change the game, or it can seal a game, and we've seen that too.
I still believe at some point this year they're going to have to win a game without takeaways, maybe a couple. Can they do that against a good team? We'll see. But
it's a weird thing, because you're like, at this point in the season, they're 8-0, and everything is nitpicky. Everything is nitpicky because the results are there. But that's one thing that we've talked about is like, what happens if they have a game where they don't win the turnover battle?
Yeah.
Fair question.
Yeah, they'll have to play really, really well.
But like, I also agree with Sirianni and Gannon that like, I don't think it's luck. I think there's some luck involved, but like to say it's luck is too dismissive of it, because they're working on these things and they're drilling it.
By the same token, when you play Dak Prescott, Daniel Jones, that might be it. They're not going to put the ball in harm's way.
I like that you went to Daniel Jones before Aaron Rodgers there.
I mean, I think he's already almost at his career high in picks in 8 games. He doesn't have anyone to throw to, really.
And he'll let you know about it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, look, he's capable of turning back into Aaron Rodgers anytime. So, I mean, you're not going to face. Somebody called him Miles Davis on a. Who was that? Somebody recently called him Miles Davis, Davis Mills. Yeah, I mean, Davis Mills and Kenny Pickett and Cooper Rush. You're not going to face these guys every week, especially if you get into the postseason.
Yeah.
So, they're good enough to win those games, but it's not going to be as easy. It'll be interesting.
Where's the secondary rank
in the league?
No, in your time covering this team, it's got to be up there.
Well, that 49 group, I'll tell you what, Dave. I mean, look, they've had some really good ones. Doc and Bobby Taylor and Troy Vincent. I mean, they had some really good ones. But as far as 5 deep, and it's weird because like back then the nickel corner wasn't really
a starting position.
Yeah, it was a guy who played maybe 8 or 10 snaps, and he was really usually just the third outside corner. Yeah. Well,
they did have Al Harris as their.
Yeah. He wasn't really that good until he got called for so many penalties when he was here. He got a lot better when he went to Green Bay. And they've had some really good secondaries, but that's an interesting question. And, certainly.
As far as starting cornerback duos, I mean, they've had good ones. Slay and Bradbury.
They're up there.
I mean, I think sometimes we think back like, no way they're as good as Troy and Bobby. I don't know. Like, they're really good.
I mean, Bobby wasn't the most physical player. He was a really, his thing was shutting down Michael Irvin. That's what he did. He was a really good cover. He also didn't make a lot of big plays. I mean, I think he went 3 years with 1 interception, like in 30 games or something. He was a good player, and he did make a Pro Bowl, but Bradbury's better. Troy Vincent was a real playmaker. He was a really good player. They like a 6-time Pro Bowler. Slay is just as good as him.
Yeah.
Lito and Sheldon. I mean, Lito, his thing was jumping routes, but he gave up some big plays. These guys aren't giving up big plays, and they're making big plays. That's what sets them apart. It's too bad we don't have some of the analytics for those earlier groups, so you can kind of compare a little deeper. But I wouldn't hesitate to say the secondary is as good as any secondary I've seen here.
Yeah, and there have been good. It's been a while since we've talked about the secondary like that.
Yeah,
especially the cornerback position.
Yeah, because there's always been that one weak link.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was Isaiah Jenkins or whoever it was, it's always been a weak link. They don't have that.
No, they certainly don't. These guys have been so much fun to watch, and we'll see what happens because it might be really short lived. I had some people ask me about Bradbury on Twitter, and of course they'd love to re-sign James Bradbury, but he also missed out on free agency this past offseason. So my guess is that he's going to want to test it, and this is probably his last chance to really get a big payday.
30,
so, ideally, sign him now, right? Get him, keep him. But it's not that simple.
Yeah, and it's not like most years where Howie has unlimited funds to start signing everybody because the big one's looming.
Yeah.
The big one's looming, and everything starts with the quarterback and his contract. Half the defense is up. I mean, that's kind of like the elephant in the room. Half the defense is free agent.
Yeah.
Next year, this defense will look a lot different. It's going to be a big challenge because they're going to have to start over again, but got some games to play before then.
Yeah. You have some good stats for me?
Yeah. So I did a couple stat pieces in the last week. One was the Jalen Hurts stats. They're fun. This is like we each have things we do. They're like our loss leaders. Mm-hmm. That we just like doing them, so we do.
That's
them.
Everything I
do. and they're fun, and some people like them, and some don't read them. But a couple Jalen Hurts. I did a piece of all Jalen Hurts stats last week, and then non-Jalen Hurts stats that ran yesterday. Jalen Hurts is the 3rd youngest quarterback ever to have an 8-0 start. 3rd youngest quarterback ever to go 8-0. Dan Marino was 23 years and 36 days when the Dolphins were 8-0 in 84, and Jared Goff was 24 and 14 days when the 2018 Rams got to 8-0. The Rams lost the next week. The Dolphins won their first 11, so something to keep in mind. He's also only the 6th quarterback under 25 to win 10 straight games at any point. The other ones are Marino, Roethlisberger, Dak, Peyton Manning, and Lamar Jackson. So pretty good company there. One more Hurts stat. He's got 18 total touchdowns, 12 passing, 6 rushing, and 2 interceptions. Only 6 other quarterbacks have had 18 TDs and 2 or fewer interceptions after 8 games. Guys like Brady, Rodgers, Mahomes, Breeze. So some good stuff. You would like to add fumbles lost in there, but there's no way to do that.
I was just about to ask that.
Yeah, I would have liked to.
Like total giveaways.
Total giveaways and total touchdowns. But finding stats for fumbles lost is not easy.
Okay.
It's easier to find fumbles. But you kind of have to go through game books, and like hell, I wasn't going to do that. But
you want to do that for 40-year span?
Yeah. A couple non-Hurt stats. Eagles interior line had 4 sacks against Pittsburgh. It was Hargrave had 2, Marlon Tuipulotu had 1, and Milton Williams had 1. And then the interior lineman had 3 against Houston. They were all Hargrave. Yeah. But first time the Eagles have had 3 sacks in back-to-back games from the D line since 1995. It was the first game was against Washington. Andy Harmon had all 3, and the next week against the Giants, Andy had 2, and Kevin Johnson had 2, so they had 4. So it's been 27 years since the interior D line had this many sacks in a 2-game period, and. All right, one more. Eagles have three giveaways, 3 turnovers, 2 picks, and a fumble by Jalen the other day. That equals the fewest in NFL history after 8 games. The 2017 Chiefs and 2020 Packers also had 3. So you can find the full gamut of stats on our website, NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com.
Turnover margin. You win that, you're going to win some football games.
Yeah, and they're plus 15, which matches the best in franchise history after 8 games. They're also plus 15 in 1950 and 1959. I don't think it's sustainable, but if it is, this team's not going to lose any games.
Yeah, that's the thing. And Sirianni said their goal in every game is to be plus 2. Which is crazy.
It's crazy. It's like when BG said he's going to have 2 sacks a game.
Yeah. And we went, BG, that's 32 sacks. You're going to smash the single season record.
But I don't think anyone's going to beat this team unless they win the turnover battle. I just think they're so good. They're so talented on both sides of the ball that the only way to beat the Eagles is to get more takeaways than they do.
Yeah, and it won't be easy.
But I think that's the only path to beat this team. You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we've got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
Opioid addiction is a national public health crisis. The Someone You Know podcast from Independence Blue Cross Foundation offers inspiring stories that challenge stigma, offer hope, and humanize the disease of addiction. Download the new Season 3 of Someone You Know on all major podcast platforms. Rube, Commanders, Monday Night Football. That is a mess of an organization, but they're not playing that bad.
No, especially defensively. The defense has really been carrying them the last month or so. I mean, they pressure well. They're solid against the run. I mean, Ron Rivera's always been a good defensive coach. That's never been in question. But there's so much drama down there. And it's just I
feel like poor Ron's aged 50 years.
Yeah.
Just from coaching that team.
Yeah, it's not an easy ask. And I think he's handled it really well. He's such a calm guy, such a calm presence.
But it is tough. It feels like every time you look, they're just doing something stupid.
I mean, that press release they sent out was just as embarrassing as anything I've ever seen. Talking
about the one that used the rookie's name.
Brian Robinson. And I mean,
not a great look.
No, the whole organization. And like, if you're an Eagles fan, you kind of hope Snyder stays just because they're never going to be good while he's the owner.
It's impossible. You can't overcome him.
No, you can't. You can for a game or two here and there, but in a big picture. And somebody asked me, I was on a radio show with Washington this morning with their sports station, and they asked me, how much people in Philly are talking about it. Like nobody cares. They just
It's not on the radar.
No, it's on the radar. I mean, we just had a baseball team in the World Series, a hockey team 7-3, 7-4. The Sixers are getting Harden back in another 6 weeks. There's a lot of excitement here. Had a soccer team in the championship.
That didn't go well.
Did not go well. But by the way, this is off topic, but you can't decide a championship soccer game with penalty kicks. I hate that. You probably like it.
I don't care.
You don't care.
Yeah.
I do care.
Okay.
I hate that's why I hate college overtime. I hate anything that's a bastardization of the game. I don't even like putting a guy in second base. Well, they don't do that in the postseason.
I was about to ask you that.
I don't like that. And thank God they don't do it in the postseason. But all those things that change the game, change the beauty and the balance of the game just to end it. I just don't like that.
You're fine with regular season?
I don't like it in regular season either.
Oh.
But
you just want to be up all night watching overtimes?
If that's what it takes, yeah. I mean, also, I don't know about being up all night. If you start a game at 7, it's gonna,
goes until they score.
Well, there's been some legendary long games.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think football's different. I think football, you don't want to keep playing overtimes in the regular season just because of the physical toll on players. I don't like ties, but I'd like to see overtime in an NFL be 15 instead of 12. But I hate the college overtime. Just get the ball to 20 or whatever it is, 25. Hate that. You end up with these 78-71 games and everything. But penalty kicks, it's just, come on. Like, it's not what the game is. How do you decide a championship based on something that's not even a part of the game? Like, if you could watch 10 soccer games and not see a penalty. You might see one here and there, but that's how they decide the championship. Just don't like it. But anyway, what was the question?
We were talking about the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, I don't know how we got on that, but
you were saying how great it was in the city.
Yeah, but I don't think the Commanders are going to come into the Link Monday night and not play as well because of what's going on. I think it's
maybe not like point A to point B like that,
right? But
if the the players are upset, and I read from our buddy JP Finley down there that players are upset about this last thing using Brian Robinson's name, and I understand that.
Sure.
At a certain point, the players got to be like, "What are we doing here?"
But I also think players, they understand that they're playing for their lives and their families and contracts. I don't think you can win with a franchise like that, but I think you can win a game here and there.
And they have. They're 2-1 in their last 3.
They're 2-1, and defensively, they just don't give up points. I just had this up on my screen, but like the last, let's see. Sometimes NFL Jesus is so slow. Let's see. Their last 4 games, they've gone up 7, 21, 16, and 20. And 21 the week before that. So, what did the Eagles score against them?
24.
Yeah.
They could have scored more.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a 24-0 game until the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that's
Washington
right.
tacked on a safety and then a
look. I don't think the Eagles are going to lose. I mean, the game's here on a Monday night. I just don't see. But I don't think they're going to give up just because of what's going on.
You're probably right. And Heineke isn't as talented as Carson Wentz,
right?
But he gives them a better shot to win.
It's probably true. I don't know if that is true. The players seem to love him. Yeah, it probably is true.
I think it's true.
Yeah, I mean, he's not that good. Their numbers
are spunky.
Yeah,
they play hard. I mean, they're just not a very good team.
A good D-line.
Good D-line. And actually, I have some matchups here. Do you want to go through some matchups? The first one is Eagles receivers against their corners. Because you remember what happened the last time these two teams played. Devontae Smith went off. He had the best game of his career. 8 catches, 169 yards, and a touchdown. And you'd think, okay, that means A.J. Brown didn't get his. No, he had 85 yards and a touchdown too. Yeah, I mean, their secondary is not awful. And when you get that kind of pressure, it makes it a little tough to throw. I think teams are completing only 59.9% of their passes against Washington. So they only have 3 interceptions. They've allowed 16 touchdowns, which is kind of ominous. Their secondary is not great, but the pressure they get makes them better. Yeah. And they might get Chase Young back. So
It's a challenge for the O-line. I think if the O-line holds up and plays the way they should, it's going to be tough for Washington. It'll be a tough day for Washington defensively.
Yeah, you're probably right. Devontae against Kendall Fuller in that game just crushed him. What did he have? He had 95 of his yards against Kendall Fuller.
Interesting.
Yeah. 5 for 95 and a touchdown on. Kendall Fuller's their best corner. And they've switched up their nickel spot. It was Wild Goose who had a tough matchup the first time against the Eagles, got called for a few big penalties. They've switched that up. You did bring up the defensive line, which is a good point. To me, though, that's still Eagles' strength versus Washington's strength.
Sure.
And they're good. Like, those guys, Allen and Payne and Sweat, and we'll see if Chase Young plays. Very good. They're not as deep as they once were on that line.
One of only 2 teams in the league with 5 guys with 3 sacks or more.
Yeah.
Dallas is the other one. They get a lot of pressure from the interior. Kind of like the Eagles lately.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the matchup between the Eagles O-line and just about anybody.
That's the thing. It's like, this is clearly the bright spot of this Washington team is up front, but you still feel pretty good with the Eagles against them.
Yeah, no doubt.
And even if Chase Young plays, he's probably going to be on a pitch count.
Right.
Might not be completely back.
Right. He hasn't played in a year.
Been a long time.
I think it was a year ago. It might have been a year ago today that he tore his ACL. I believe it was against Tampa. Which today's date? The 10th?
Yeah.
It was November 14th. Yeah, so a year ago. Really good play. I mean, he had a hell of a rookie year. I think he got hurt. I think he only played 7 games last year.
He's talented.
He is.
He was number 2 overall pick for a reason, but
Ohio State, right?
Mm-hmm.
Buckeyes, they call them.
Thanks.
My friend from college, I went to school right near Ohio State, just north of there. My friend is the pastor at the church right next to their stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And like 90% of their annual revenue comes from people that park on their grass before at Ohio State games.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. I thought that was interesting. What other matchups you got?
Well, the flip of that is Eagles' defensive line against Commanders' O-line. Right. You remember what happened last time these teams played? It was hunting season, and not Carson's favorite hunting season. He was a sitting duck back there. 9 sacks in that game.
9 sacks.
And some of them were on Carson.
Oh, yeah. I think it was the 3rd most in Eagles history. And Taylor Heineke's not going to get sacked 9 times. He does a much better job getting out of, just kind of running around, getting out of the way. Carson used to be good at that.
He used to be.
Yeah.
I mean, but his pocket awareness in that first matchup was
non-existent.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Used to be's don't count anymore. They just lay on the floor till we sweep them away. That's all.
What's that?
It's a lyric from a song.
Okay.
I think it's from that Barbra Streisand Barry Gibb record. I'm not positive.
Yeah, I don't think Heineke's going to get sacked 9 times, but you can still get pressure on this line. I think they have an opportunity to get after him a little bit and try to force him into doing too much. I think he's one of those guys who, he's good off schedule, but that can be a bad thing too, because he thinks he can extend plays. Yeah. And as long as you cover, you have a chance to get some turnovers, really. He's thrown a pick in each of his starts this year, and I think the Eagles have a chance to get some more from him.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's funny because Nick used that word, I think, spunky, to describe him a few times. What does that mean? That's basically just a guy who's a late round pick who, kind of runs around, makes off schedule plays, makes some exciting plays, but ultimately he's not that good.
Yeah, it's Case Keenum.
Who's a spunky Eagles quarterback? AJ Feely?
Coy Detmer.
I think AJ. I'll go AJ Feely.
Nah, Coy.
He won more games than Coy.
Yeah, but Coy was spunkier.
You're the second person that mentioned Coy today. That's kind of weird.
That's very who else mentioned Coy Detmer?
Drew Longman.
Huh.
And his name just came up. Very odd.
That is very
What
odd.
else you got?
The last one is always going to be a matchup. It's McLaurin against Slay.
Yeah.
I'd imagine Slay is going to travel, even with Curtis Samuel being there and playing all right. Dotson might be back in this game.
Right.
But, McLaurin had good numbers the first time these teams played, but Slay did a good job against him. And it's fun that each week they play a great receiver. You just know Slay's going to man them.
Slay was asked today, when you face the receiver in the division, when you face a receiver for the second time, do you do anything different? Which is such to me, it's a stupid question because, and he said, how did I play against him? And I was like, you played well against him. Like, why would I do anything different? like, no, just go play. I'll just go play. I don't do anything different. McLaurin's really good.
Very good.
Really good player.
And Heineke throws in the ball. This is interesting. So with Wentz as his quarterback, 6.2 targets per game this year. Heineke up to 8.3 targets for McLaurin. And Heineke will just toss it to him.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to be open. Heineke's like, he's down there somewhere. I'll throw it.
Yeah.
Something to keep in mind.
I wonder what's going to happen. I think Carson is eligible to come back after this game, I believe.
Yeah, I believe so.
I wonder what they'll do.
I guess it depends on this game.
Maybe.
Because if you lose 2 in a row, that magic might be like wearing off. And I still think Carson's a better player.
I do too. Well,
more talented. I shouldn't say a better player.
Yeah. Well, like numbers wise, let's see. I mean, they're pretty close. Oh, Heineke does have better numbers. He got a slightly higher completion percentage.
Mm-hmm.
He's got half as many touchdowns in less than half as many passes. Interception ratio is worse. Heineke's is worse. Sacks are better. Passer rating is a little higher. So his numbers are a little better than Carson's. Carson's just not very good anymore.
No, but there's still talent there, and that's going to be enough to probably go back to him at some point this year.
Yeah. I wonder if he'll be out of the league in a couple of years.
It has that feeling.
Yeah, doesn't it? And I'm sure he could be a 3 somewhere. It's probably a 2 somewhere. He'd be pretty good too.
Andy Dalton.
But I wonder if
not just because they're redheads.
I wonder if he even wants that. Like Donovan had no desire to do that. And he was pretty young when that last year in Minnesota, he was like 32. Mm-hmm. He had no desire. He just was like, no, if I'm not starting, I'm not going to be in the league.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Frank Reich.
Yeah.
Got fired on Monday. I think we mentioned it on our last pod, but we had a chance to talk to Nick Sirianni since then. And Nick didn't want to say too much, clearly not happy about the Colts' decision. Him and Frank are very close, but he was asked whether or not he's given any thought to bringing in Frank in some sort of role, presumably an advisory role this year, but maybe more after that. I don't know. What do you think about that? I mean, would that make some sense?
I think, and his answer was, I haven't even thought about it. We're wrapped up in Washington. There's no way he hasn't thought about it. Come on. Yeah. I mean, if I'm a sports editor of a paper and you're working for another paper and you get fired, I think it would cross my mind, man, maybe I should bring Dave in to cover hockey or something. Yeah. It's natural. I mean, they're so close. He says he talks to him all the time.
I'm sure they've talked since.
He's probably at his house right now. He probably sold his house in Indy. He's staying at the Sirianni's, babysitting the kids. I don't know. There's no way he hasn't thought about it. I think it's going to come down to what Frank wants to do. I think if Frank doesn't get a job anywhere as a coordinator, and he says, look, Nick, I need to work somewhere. I mean, he could just retire. Was he 60?
Well, we turn 61 next
61.
month.
I don't know. I don't know offhand what his contract is. I think he had one more year after this year.
Don't know.
So, I mean, he's going to make a fortune. I mean, he's made more as their head coach than he's ever made in his life combined. So if he wants to retire and go fishing and live on a lake in I almost said North Dakota, but that probably wouldn't be appropriate. But in a lake in Vermont, you're sitting there fishing and Carson sails by in a rowboat, Hey, coach, you caught anything? I knew I should have moved to Vermont. But so if he wants to continue coaching and he doesn't have an offer, and he calls Nick and says, Nick, can you bring me in for? I'm sure he would.
He's gonna. It's even, and I thought Nick said it pretty well. Even if he doesn't have a title, he's an advisor to Nick Sirianni. He was already. He is right now, and I'm sure they'll be talking quite a bit next week before the Eagles play the Colts. I'd imagine they'll get quite a bit from Frank on that.
Yeah, and I still think Frank's a good offensive coach. The head coaching thing didn't work out. Although, I mean, look, they had 2 10-win seasons.
Yeah.
His best year was his first year. And he was just kind of hamstrung by the whole quarterback situation. Some of it was his own doing.
Hamstrung by the GM,
That
who
too.
somehow skates by.
Terrible GM.
Because he talks straight to you.
Yeah. Some of it was Frank's doing, but yeah, for the most part, I mean, the Luck retirement that really killed him.
Although, as a franchise, they got to get over that.
Yeah,
I feel like it'll be like the year 2032, and the Colts will be like, "Yeah, but Andrew Luck retired on us right before."
But for
season.
Frank, I mean, it didn't help. But you're right. But I would think he'll be here next year. I think there's a pretty good chance of it.
Okay. You got anything else? And I should mention, like, I think Brian Johnson is their best internal candidate if Shane Steichen were to get hired away. But Brian Johnson could end up being. Is it crazy to think he'd be a head coaching candidate?
It's not crazy when you look at what the quarterback has done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we've talked about potentially losing pieces on defense because of free agency. This coaching staff might get picked over.
It really might. He talks about Jason Michael a lot. He really thinks a lot of Jason Michael. So he's a tight ends coach.
Yeah. Thanks.
I'm not telling you.
No,
you know.
No.
One other thing I did want to mention, it wasn't in your matchups, but I'm really interested to see how Washington runs against the Eagles. They haven't stopped anybody lately. They're not a good running team.
Yeah.
What's Antonio Gibson? 3.7?
Yeah, Brian Robinson's really been the runner.
Yeah, and he's
struggling a little bit. Rookie.
3.3.
Coming back from a layoff and an injury
Yeah. They do not run the ball well. So if they can run the ball against, look, I still don't think they can beat the Eagles, even if they run for 200 yards, but you'd like to see the Eagles shut down somebody's running game.
Yeah.
I don't think I mentioned they're only the second team in history to go 8-0, allowing 5.2 rushing yards per game.
You did not mention that.
And they're only the second team to win 4 straight games, allowing 120 or more yards.
Your head ever just hurt?
Hurts right now.
Okay.
Just being in the room with you.
All right. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye Podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. My parents would agree with that. If you enjoy the podcast, rate, subscribe. YouTube, do that too. Click like, subscribe there. That's
Monday's going to be fun, by the way.
Monday is going to be fun. We'll be with you late at night.
Middle of the night podcast for
the crazies who want to stay up all night and listen to us jabber on about whatever.
Barbara Streisand.
All right. Take care, everyone. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.